Today is Saturday, August the 31st, 2024. And today I want to deal with problems with hidden identities. And I'm going to do my best not to be offensive as I pull this together for you. But in my heart, I know that people who this does not apply to aren't offended. Um, but let me start by saying that a couple of months ago, I went to the doctor with my mother, and while we were there, there was, quite a bit of signage around related to diversity and inclusion, and from that visit, I began using the term SOGIes, which stands for sexual orientation, gender identity focused people. Um, there are some positives to that if we are moving to a place where people who are transgender can fully be who they are and answer for who they are without any shame or fear of condemnation. And I know that there are some people who want to live that truth, but because there also are people who still exist who may target them as a result of them being fully authentic about who they are, that everyone is not going to be comfortable or emboldened enough to be able to walk in their identity. But it is critically important because people cannot have any guilt or shame about who it is they are or how they choose to identify. But let me make an even deeper point with this video about why this is critical for these individuals specifically. Um, the first thing that I want to do is share with you a post from this morning, which sort of started me down this rabbit hole. And my concern in these women caucuses is non-genetic females who are speaking to issues and creating policies and then advocacy for issues that are related to biological women, which they are not. And not only that, they are advocating for things that biological women do not want. But because we do not have a forum for our own voices, these are the people who are selected to speak for us, really for us. And the problem with that is you're advocating for things that are not helpful or healthy for biological women while completely ignoring your own medical needs, because that is a critical issue for you all.
And as you guys know, what makes this caucus so unique is because it is bipartisan. We represent all corners of the country, but we managed to get along. As a key women's caucus priority this Congress, we will be addressing the high rate of maternal mortality in the United States. Mental health, yeah, that's definitely worth cheering for. Mental health, homelessness, and domestic violence will be our priorities as we forge ahead. We'll be highlighting key women's health prevention messages throughout the year, focusing on cardiovascular disease and breast cancer. We were going to be focusing on combating sex trafficking and violence against women and girls, whether in this country or abroad, on our campuses and in our military. Susie?
All right, thank you. Looking for ways to expand women's financial security will be a major focus of this caucus in this Congress, including improving access to capital for women small business owners, economic self-sufficiency, retirement security, and promoting family-friendly workplaces, and finding ways to continue to increase the representation of women at every level of society, from Congress to the C-suite. We will continue the caucus's work to address the unique needs of female service members and our veterans, including a focus on military sexual trauma and PTSD. And we will work to expand opportunities for women and girls in STEAM, science, technology, engineering, the arts, and math.
If you want to live in a world where you can feel safe, healthy, and happy, then there has to be a specificity to the kind of medical care you are given in this toxic, contaminated environment, because it is going to be unique to people who are non-genetic gendered, male and female. But I'm speaking specifically to non-genetic females, because this is the population who is causing the most problems. And that's the truth. That's just the truth. The reason that I bring this up is because as I observed this inclusion and diversity signage in the medical office, there was an notation about research that is being done, because all of the Sentara hospitals are affiliated with locally in Norfolk. Let's just stay with Norfolk. Are connected to Eastern Virginia Medical School. And for those who have not seen it, let me just show you the campus map for Eastern Virginia Medical School. Keep in mind that in Norfolk, we have 4 hospitals. So here are 2 of the 4 hospitals in this one city. But you can see here is Lewis Hall is like EVMS's main building, and it is inclusive of the Jones Institute, where they do reproductive health, and they do in vitro fertilization and infertility treatments and so on and so forth. And then directly across is Children's Hospital of the King's Daughters. Next to that is Sentara Norfolk General Hospital, where they have a specialization in heart treatment and surgeries and so forth, right within that same hospital complex. And then if you look across West Brambleton Avenue is the Public Health Department. Within the Public Health Department is also the Medical Examiner's Office. So the place where they take deceased bodies to be autopsied and examined, and to send that information back to the state office for epidemiology data collection. And then in Williams Hall, they have a specialization in endocrinology, which is related to diabetic care. So all of this is right within walking distance, is like a whole, I see it as like a death walk, because you start with the infertility treatments, and then you have the Children's Hospital, and then you have the Heart Hospital, and then across the street you have the Medical Examiner's Office, all right there within walking distance. So I want you to keep that in mind in terms of how Norfolk is structured, because not only do we have this huge medical complex here, we also have the largest naval base in the entire world, all stationed in this one city. And as a medical school, they are going to be doing research all the time, constantly. That's all that, they're going to be doing research, even if it's research of things that they already have answers to, because the issues have not been resolved. These students are going to feel motivated to do research around how to eliminate, whatever it is their interest area is, usually because of their own trauma. They have a particular medical issue that they want to be able to focus on and to resolve, like cancer, for example. And as a result of that, when they are doing research, if they are not aware that they are doing research for women, for example, or on breast cancer, let's say, and the people who they are conducting their research on, if they are not fully cognizant of the fact that this person is not a genetic female, then the data is going to be skewed, and it is not going to help women. It's also not going to help non-genetic females who have undergone hormone treatment to have their breasts grow. So there are some very unique medical treatments, and therefore symptoms and pathology related to people who are genetically modifying their body, who are also being exposed to the same toxic conditions as women, that it's not going to manifest in the same way because they are biologically male. And I really want to help make this point because, the other side of this is the hidden nature of sexually transmitted or maintained diseases. I want to pause here for a moment to say more about the history of sexually transmitted diseases so we can get that straight. I'm also going to share a video in a moment that I thought had good visual storytelling around historical research of sexually transmitted infections. The first thing that I want to clear up is that the Old Testament Bibles were not published for public consumption until the 1500s. So there's information that was standardized and selected for inclusion in those texts that contribute to people's thoughts about what is ancient and distorts people's understanding of how long people have been aware of certain things. I want to share these particular articles to allow you to read through these and contemplate all that I am about to say in full context. There is a misinterpretation of experiments on the suspected identity that is historic and needs to be addressed. I took this particular article from Botanica because the Ish believe that they are the gold standard for anything. And in some regards, that's true because they caused the problems. They are in a better position to try to address how to resolve the issues. The problem is that the people who could help bring that about, they don't want that kind of change, and they're not going to give them all of the information relative to how they're causing the problems in the first place. But a huge aspect of the transmission of disease is hygiene, and hygiene related to water quality and air quality. So just keep these things in mind. And I posted in a previous video the question about, or it may have just been a post, the question of what happens when a person contracts a sexually transmitted disease. How do they usually contract these diseases? And then as a result of how they contracted these diseases, how do they then seek treatment for it? So there is a whole sector of medical care that is completely secretive and hidden, that doesn't have anything to do with patient privacy and confidentiality in the way that it is, the way I struggle with it as a parent trying to manage the medical care of my own children, even though they are over 18, for example. They have no idea. They have no context. There's no way they could have as much context about their own medical health as I do, because I have been managing their medical care for their entire lives. So then at 18, for them to be able to have medical testing and diagnosis and treatment be completely hidden from me does not help them. But that's true for anybody who is seeking to have a medical issue resolved in the confidence of only a physician, where they do not feel comfortable that they could talk to anyone who cares about them, who knows them, who sees them on a daily basis, who can tell that something is, something is there that wasn't there before, or they're showing symptoms of something that they've never seen before because they've known them their whole life. And so there's this, you have somebody providing treatment in this isolated context away from people who actually care and could assist them in managing whatever that medical issue is. I want to pause here and bear with me with all the pausing. Some research that I was doing back in 2021 on blood sepsis, which is, in my opinion, what HIV and AIDS and a lot of these other blood-borne infections are, that they are all sepsis, hepatitis, all of those. And looking at penicillin and how it's being used currently. And I just want you, for those of you who've done that research, this may be helpful to you if you still felt stuck in coming into agreement with me about diagnosing these disorders as blood sepsis. But look at the number of synthetic penicillin molds that have been used and branded, some of which were discontinued because it was killing people. And to consider what the impact or implication is of using man-made synthetic remedies versus using what they already know works naturally. And a big part of that, again, is going to be because the use of synthetic hormones and even prosthetics are going to interfere with how nature functions because they're not natural. It's not living in the way that natural remedies are. Another confounding issue is the problem with immunity suppression, because if you are trying to alter the natural genetics of a person, then the body is going to fight against whatever that is. So you combine that with the fact that people are trying to maintain a non-genetic biological state, and the body's natural tendency to fight against that, and the other things that are going to culminate in the body once an infection has been introduced because your immunity has been suppressed to be able to maintain your identity. The saying is cliche but true. You cannot have it both ways and be healthy.
Parliamentary Women's Caucus is being established. Minister of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport Olivia Babsy-Grange made the announcement as the country celebrated International Women's Day on March 8.
A Women's Parliamentary Caucus, which comprises women from both sides of the divide, from the opposition and the government, and from the Senate and the House of Representatives. This organization, or this body that is being established in Parliament, is now being put together by a core group led by Member of Parliament Tamika Davis.
Minister Grange says regulations are being tailored that will govern how the caucus will operate.
In establishing the core group, I made the point that the Parliamentary Women's Caucus can be an important vehicle for achieving inclusive development and most likely to succeed when they are designed to meet the context within which they operate. We have the largest number of women in Parliament ever in the history of this country.
She was speaking at the ministry's The Empowerment Forum held by the Bureau of Gender Affairs under the theme, Breaking Barriers, Empowered Women, Empowering Women.
As you watch this next clip, I want you to consider the source of urinary tract infections. And I will help you to know that a big part of it is yeast. And if you know anything about yeast, it needs moisture and warmth in order to grow. I also want you to consider, as you're watching this, the visual representation of the environment the people are living in and what impact living without clean, potable water would mean for the health of the people in those ports.
Epidemiological research shows that in rural societies around the world, syphilis was present, but in a much milder form, and was not transmitted sexually, Mary Lucas Powell studies the evolution of the bacteria and how it has been transmitted amongst the Indian communities of the New World.
Well, in the pre-Columbian New World, in the southeastern United States, there was ample opportunity because of styles of clothing, of styles of communal sharing of eating and drinking utensils, of sleeping places. There was abundant opportunities in every generation for these diseases to be transmitted without any sort of sexual contact involved. And therefore, they were much more common within the populations, but with no connection with sexual activity.
What the syphilis bacteria needs in order to spread is skin-to-skin contact. In unsophisticated rural communities and in hot climates, like pre-Columbian America, the bacteria could easily pass from skin to skin. It caused an ugly skin disease that everyone caught in childhood. It rarely developed into something more serious. And everyone who caught it as a child was immunized against the dangerous venereal form of the disease. So why then does the bacteria sometimes mutate into a sexually transmitted killer? If we look at the places where we now know syphilis existed in its deadly venereal form, will that help us to understand? What is it that links Metaponto, Pompeii, Hull, and Naples? One common denominator is that they were all ports.
Well, ports are ports. People always behave badly in ports. It seems that Hamburg is a good example at the moment, Rotterdam, Amsterdam, they're all ports. They all have very large red light districts. And if you're an all-male crew cooped up on a ship, then you would expect a certain amount of recreational activity to occur and a certain amount of sexual activity to occur. And there will always be prostitution.
But it could not simply be promiscuity. The culture of some rural communities in the New World, for example, allows for promiscuity before marriage. The difference, as the archaeologists at Hull discovered, was just how cosmopolitan these ports were. The wine came from Spain. The coffin wood was traced to the Baltic forests. Traces of precious metal from the Far East were found on the friary stones. Complex international trading, it seems, was an essential feature of life in medieval Hull.
You're going to have people from the Baltic, which was seen from the timber trade, and from Spain coming in with the pottery and the wine. We're also going to have people from the Low Countries, the Dutch, the French, people coming from Poland. And because you've got high turnover of population, disease is going to come in.
There is another reason why the bacteria had mutated in certain towns in the Old World into this horrific sexually transmitted plague.
Venereal syphilis is primarily a disease of cities, of advanced civilizations with advanced health measures and medications.
Civilization means syphilization. Better hygiene, the wearing of clothes, less sharing of eating and drinking utensils means the less dangerous form of the bacteria cannot move around. It must mutate to survive. The people buried.
If you haven't already watched these two videos in their entirety, I invite you to do so now. You can either use the links in the description or you can write down these links and then type them into your browser. So once you've watched those two videos, I'd like for you to consider something that I have tried to help folks understand for quite a bit now, and that is that there is an aspect of hormones, estrogen and testosterone, that are specifically designed to ensure that you are attracted to the opposite gender. In the same way a dog would not be attracted to a cat to mate, there are components of those hormones that ensure that you enter an appropriate relationship at the appropriate time once you have found your eternal partner which is another reason why sex before marriage is problematic. But if you will learn how to be a friend and work together to make the corrections so that the earth can survive, everything will work itself out naturally. I promise.